We have a big update in the 2311 Racing Front Row Motorsports appeal in their lawsuit against NASCAR. James Small takes kind of a jab at Martin Truex Jr. now that the season is over, and Brad Keselowski will have a new old voice in his ear in 2025. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. It snowed today, which is a little uncalled for, kind of like what the comments were that James Small made about Martin Truex Jr., but we're not going to talk about that quite yet. Instead, we're going to talk about 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports and their lawsuit against NASCAR, because on Wednesday night, we got word that they had dropped their appeal for the request for preliminary injunction against NASCAR. The teams in their court filing said, quote, "Circumstances have changed in the underlying case, removing the need for this appeal and necessitating appellants to seek new relief from the district court." So what exactly does all that mean? Well, one thing it does not mean is that there's not a settlement coming between 2311 Racing, Front Row Motorsports, and NASCAR. A few weeks ago in court, NASCAR said publicly they have no interest in doing business with these teams because of how they've been disparaged in the public. So I don't think any settlement is coming from this. At least not in this moment and not in this case. Could a settlement come down the road? Yeah, potentially. Maybe after both sides have kind of just beat each other up, they're like, all right, can we just come to a decision at this point and not continue this battle on? That could absolutely happen. But for now, that's not what the case is going to be here. What likely is going to happen is that they, decided to cancel their appeal. They're going back to square one. We're going to start completely over in this process. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I think the teams will refile a request for an injunction and not have to worry about the appeal. I think what the teams are doing here is they're going to, well, they have to, not what I think. They have to prove that there will be, irreparable damages done by not having these charters. And so far in this entire case, you can't just deal in speculations. You can't just legislate against, ifs and buts. You need to actually come to the table with some sort of number. Like, you have to prove that you will lose X amount of dollars. You can't be like, well, if we don't get the charters, we could lose, sponsorships. We could lose money. We could lose drivers. No, you will lose drivers if this happens. You will lose this much money. That's what the teams have to come to the table with. And I think that's what their new appeal is going to do. Now, is it a coincidence that Riley Herbst was announced to 2311 Racing the same day that this court filing comes out that they're dropping their appeal? I don't think it was a coincidence. I think, just to speculate here, that potentially, Riley Herbst in that 35 car could possibly be a pawn in this scheme for the time being. That being, hey, listen, the only way this deal gets done is if we have a charter. Now that we don't have a charter, you can see we're going to lose X amount of dollars from this deal. So that monster money that they would have on that B2B deal, gone. So maybe that's what's happening. It just seems a bit too convenient to have that announced and this court filing happen on the same day. We'll have to wait and see what the teams decide to do. But for now, they have dropped their appeal, which puts them back to square one in the timeline that, they had proposed and NASCAR was, countering, and the court was trying to decide what was going to do. That's kind of off the table. And we're likely not going to hear, if they do file a new request for an injunction, and that whole process probably isn't going to happen until maybe after Christmas time. It could get expedited, of course. I'm just not entirely sure that's going to happen for the time being. So it's still likely going to be until January, maybe even later, before we find out if they will be granted this injunction or not. Remember back at the beginning of the episode when I said that snow before Thanksgiving was uncalled for, kind of like James Small's comments about Martin Truex Jr.? Well, let's talk about that real quick, because James Small called into SiriusXM NASCAR on Wednesday, and he talked about the transition from Martin Truex Jr. to Chase Briscoe, 2025, things like that, how this year went with MTJ, and he kind of took an unprovoked and uncalled for jab at him. He said, quote, "It's going to be nice to have somebody who lives in North Carolina and comes to the shop multiple times a week so we can actually build a team around him." Insert that Jesus Christ clip right here.
Jesus Christ.
Because, the dude's retired now. Why are you taking shots at him now that he's retired? Now, this could just kind of be a cultural thing. Like, James Small's Australian. Australians, Europeans, they really don't care about pulling punches, and they'll just say what they want to say, which I'm all for. But, kind of unnecessary in this situation, because you could have said something earlier if you weren't happy about it. Regardless, Martin Truex Jr. hasn't lived in the same place as his team has been based out of before, and it certainly didn't seem to affect him, because when he raced for Furniture Row Racing, they were based out of Denver, Colorado. That's 2 time zones away from North Carolina. It's a mile above sea level. Their closest racetrack to their shop, 8 hours away. And they still managed to win a championship, 17 races with Cole Pearn. How many other top fives do they have? 55 top fives, 86 top tens in their 4 seasons at Furniture Row Racing for Cole Pearn and Martin Truex Jr. All why Martin Truex Jr. did not live in Denver, Colorado. But yes, not living in North Carolina, it's just hard to build a team around a guy that's just not there at the shop because that hasn't been done before. In the 5 seasons that Martin Truex Jr. and James Small had together, they had 8 wins, 44 top 5s, 85 top 10s, no championships, no wins in 2 seasons that they were together, including this past season in 2024, no wins for Truex and that number 19 team. It just feels a little unprovoked and uncalled for, if we're being completely honest. Now, Martin Truex Jr. probably doesn't care because it doesn't seem like he cared for the last 6 months driving that car. He did get 2 poles, though, to close out the year, so hats off to him for that. While I thought he was probably going to be out on a fishing boat, Dale Earnhardt Jr. commented on Reddit and said that he was out deer hunting this week and hit or bagged, rather, 183-inch deer. And for all the deer hunters out there, you know that's just a gigantic deer hunter. Me being a deer hunter myself, I'm sure you can absolutely see just how much of a deer hunter I am because I'm talking about deer hunting and you shoot it with a rifle. And I am a deer hunter on the big buck hunter machine in my basement, but not in actual real life. I do own a shotgun though. But yeah, I don't think Martin cares, but this just kind of felt uncalled for. Now we'll get to see what James Small can do next year when he builds a team around a driver that's based in North Carolina, that being Chase Briscoe. I think a lot of people have high hopes for him. I really don't have that high hope. I don't have that high of hopes. That's what I was looking for there. I think they could be good, but I'm really reserved, and I'm not as high on Chase Briscoe as others are. Maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe he'll go out there and absolutely light the world on fire because he has all the resources around him. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see how all of it's going to play out. I'm just not sure the two of them are going to gel necessarily, but I guess that's what the whole building process is about. So we'll see how it goes. Just kind of felt like the comment was uncalled for a guy that's retired now. And just like we expected, Jeremy Bullins is headed over to Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing in 2025 to be the crew chief for Brad Keselowski, who he was the crew chief for in 2020 and 2021 at Penske. They won 5 races together, finished runner-up in the 2020 championship together. He'll now be back atop the pit box for Brad Keselowski, so Brad will have a new old voice in his ear come 2025. Matt McCall's departing the team at the end of the 2024 season. He's probably going to feel pretty inspired in 2025. I think he's going to, be in a spot where he's going to be all right going forward. So for Brad, though, this is a good signing for him. Obviously, he's had Matt McCall with him since going over to RFK. They kind of rebuilt that team together. They did win a race earlier this year in 2024 at Darlington in the spring, their only win together. Matt McCall is a crew chief that gets a lot of hate on the internet for making bad calls, which is, easy to do, hindsight 2020, that type of thing. But he and Brad just never really had the same finishes that their teammate did, Chris Buescher, in that 17 car, and it felt like some change was probably needed there. Now, Jeremy Bullins moves over from the Wood Brothers, where he was at this past season with Harrison Burton, left that team with 2 races to go in the season, took Harrison Burton to victory lane at Daytona, so that's a great accomplishment for him. Before he was with Harrison, he was with Austin Cindric in, 2022 and 2023 as well. Took Austin Cindric to victory lane at the Daytona 500 back in 2022, and just really never had the same type of success that he had with Brad Keselowski at Penske and then at the Wood Brothers. So maybe getting out of that Penske Wood Brothers family fold and moving with Brad over to RFK will be the bit of a change that he needs. Obviously, the most success he's had was with Brad those 2 years, but he's still a guy that has 10 wins as a crew chief in the NASCAR Cup Series, which there's not a ton of guys that can say that. So Brad and RFK definitely landed a good one for the 16 in 2025. I know some people have been asking who's the crew chief for Ryan Preece in that 60 car. They have not announced one yet. I'm sure they will in due course. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. RCR kind of went ahead and started to hoard the SHR guys, so I don't think they're going to get one from SHR. Maybe there could possibly be somebody out there for them, but for RFK Racing, Brad Keselowski, Jeremy Bullins, really good signing for them, and hopefully that can take that 6 car to the next level, kind of match its teammate there in the 17 in terms of, race by race pace and just more, and be consistent throughout the year. So we'll see how all of that plays out in 2025 for them. So let me know in the comments what you think about 2311 Racing, Front Row Motorsports dropping their appeal, Shane Small, his comments on Martin Truex Jr., Jeremy Bullins headed over to RFK Racing. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at Break Hard, Blue Sky at Break Hard as well, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Break Hard Blog.